the constrained vision and the unconstrained vision. Let me take a stab at a type definition of each, and then you correct it for me. Under the constrained vision, an exemplar would be Adam Smith.
Yes.
Human nature is flawed, but it's fixed. And the question is, how do we erect institutions that contain our flaws and permit us to live in the best possible society, given in effect the fallen nature of, or the fallen character of human nature? Fair?
Yes, absolutely.
So when you say constrained, it's a vision of human nature itself. Human nature is fixed, flawed, and therefore we operate within constraints, the constraints human nature itself provides. Unconstrained is human nature itself is malleable, and you say that Rousseau, man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. That's the classic statement of the unconstrained vision. Would you explain that?
Yes, that the things that we suffer, according to those with the unconstrained vision, it's because of the failure of other people to be as wise or as noble as themselves, because there are no inherent reasons for us to be unhappy.
So one looks at pain and difficulty in the world and says, well, this is the way life is. We'll never eliminate it. Let's be wise and prudent and erect institutions that make life as much better as possible. That's constrained.
Yes.
The unconstrained vision looks at pain and suffering and says we must remake the world. There are institutions causing this pain and suffering.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Now, let me give you another quotation. The two great revolutions in the 18th century in France and in America can be viewed as applications of these differing visions. Explain that one.
Well, in France, the idea was that if you simply put the right people in charge and created the right institutions, then all these problems would go away. In the United States, it was assumed from the outset that there were very limited things you could do, and what you needed to do above all was to minimize the damage done by the flaws of human nature. And this is why the United States, for example, has this Constitution, so much lamented by some of those who believe in the French Revolution, in which this group is offset by that group, and nobody can sort of run wild. If you believe that what you need is to have the right leaders who love the people and so on, a messiah, as it were, then your problems are solved. But if you don't believe there is any political messiah, and you believe that you have to make sure that all people are restrained in what they are able to do, then you have the separation of powers, you have elections, you have constitutions, you have all kinds of things hemming you in. Condorcet, who was a great supporter of the French Revolution, could not understand why there was this separation of powers, and not even when at the end of his life he was arbitrarily thrown into prison, where he continued to write about why the Americans have this separation of powers. And of course, if there had been a separation of powers, he wouldn't be rotting in prison.
Right, right. Could I just, you've got France is the unconstrained vision, 18th century America is the constrained vision, founding fathers the constrained vision. Could I ask if it goes even farther back? What comes to mind is Karl Popper's The Open Society and Its Enemies. There's a famous chapter in there in which he contrasts Plato, whom he views as a radical, the man who wants rule by the philosopher kings, with Aristotle, whom he views as a kind of piecemeal reformer. What you get in Plato is the impulse to start anew, and what you get in Aristotle is the impulse to accept the givenness of things and make one change, see how it works, another change, see how it works. In other words, I guess what I'm getting at is there some sense in which these two visions can be traced all the way through the Western tradition?
Oh, absolutely.
That's right. That's a fair statement.
Yes.
All right. Now, in this country, you talked about France versus the United States, but what about Americans versus Americans? John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson, for example? Is that a fair contrast? Adams would be constrained, Jefferson unconstrained?
To some extent, yes. Jefferson, when the complaint was made about the people who were innocent people killed during the course of the French Revolution, he said that I would rather that half the world be destroyed than that it should fail. But of course, as it went on, Jefferson backed away, and he did turn ultimately against it.
All right. So what you get,
he had a more unconstrained vision, but not totally.
Because what I'd like to do now is turn to these two visions as they play out in contemporary American politics. But before I do that, I want to make sure I understand you. Your vision is that the founding fathers, the fundamental institutions of the United States, reflect the constrained vision.
Absolutely.
And that therefore what you get within the American tradition is degrees of the constrained or the unconstrained vision. You don't get clean, sharp disagreements, or is that untrue?
Oh, you do get it. The whole erosion of the Constitution, largely by the courts, is the notion that no, we have to look out for the public interest, and therefore we won't worry about the constraints of the Constitution as much as some people would like.
All right, which takes us to segment two visions of the law. The constrained vision of the law, and here I quote a conflict of visions. Oliver Wendell Holmes expressed it when he declared, "The life of the law has not been logic, it has been experience," close quote.
Yes.
How is he giving expression to the constrained vision?
There is no one who, from sheer intellectual power, can tell you what the law ought to be. That we learn from trial and error simply because we're not capable of learning everything just by figuring it all out in advance.
The unconstrained vision of the law. Here you quote John Stuart Mill, quote, "To look at legal precedents was," I'm quoting you, "in Mill's view to make," and here you quote Mill, "an absurd sacrifice of present ends to antiquated means."
Yes.
Close quote. How is he giving voice to the unconstrained
Well,
vision?
this is the notion that we need someone to come along and update the law from his own intellectual resources rather than from the actual experience of millions of people in generation after generation. No one believes the law should remain fixed as it was at some given point in the past. The question is, who shall have the authority to change that law, and with what constraints on that person, so that that person is not just giving vent to his own feelings or imaginings or theories.
All right, let me give you a couple of quotations. John McCain, in the presidential debate of October 16th, on the kinds of judges he would nominate to the Supreme Court, quote, "I will find the best people in the United States of America who have a history of strict adherence to the Constitution and not legislating from the bench," close quote. Barack Obama, during the same debate, "If a woman is out there trying to raise a family, trying to support her family, and is being treated unfairly, then the court has to stand up if nobody else will. And that's the kind of judge I want."
That's
Close
unconstrained. That somehow or other there are people with the judicial robes on who can just decide these things ad hoc, which among other things would mean we would no longer really have law. You would discover, once you got into the courtroom in front of the judge, you would then discover what the decision is, but you'd have no clue beforehand.
So that would, a full embrace of the unconstrained vision, which Barack Obama seems intent on, would overturn the fundamental basis of American law, which is a nation of laws, not of men.
Absolutely.
It would be a nation of men, of judges.
Yes.
All right. September of this year, the Rasmussen Polling Company asked this question: should the Supreme Court make decisions based on what's written in the Constitution and legal precedents, or should it be guided mostly by a sense of fairness and justice? Close quote. 82% of McCain supporters said the Supreme Court should base its decisions on the Constitution. 29% of Obama supporters agree. 11% of McCain supporters said the Supreme Court should make its decisions on fairness. 49% of Obama supporters said that it should. Now, here's the question. You've said McCain constrained, Obama unconstrained. But what this would seem to indicate, this polling data, that this is not just a debate taking place among politicians or American elites. It's reached very deep into the American public.
Oh, absolutely.
49% of Americans think the Supreme Court should...
Of Obama supporters.
49% of Obama supporters, exactly, say the... So does that startle you? Does it alarm you?
It doesn't startle me, it depresses me. But, you know, this has been going on for a long time. People complain about a court decision on the basis that, that they wish it had turned out differently. But that isn't the judge's job. There was a wonderful case, and I wish I could remember the title of it, in which Clarence Thomas said that he really agreed with the position taken by one of the litigants in the case, but that he wasn't there to decide that issue. He was there to decide what did the law say. And the law said otherwise, and so he voted against them. You see the same thing in Oliver Wendell Holmes, where in a number of cases, he makes very cutting disparagements of one of the litigants in the case and then votes in favor of him. Because I'm not here to decide what the merit is. And one of his decisions, he said, I am not at liberty to discuss the justice of the act. The act is what it is, and once I know what that is, that's the decision I have to make.
Well then, if you see, well, one more question here. You write, the unconstrained vision, again I'm quoting you, has tended historically toward creating more equalized economic and social conditions in society, even if the means chosen imply great inequality in the right to decide such issues and choose such means, close quote. Inequality in the right to decide issues. Does that tell us why the left in the United States seems so much more comfortable with having courts make social policy?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what's going on.
Absolutely. That they want equality of outcomes, and they will choose how to make the outcomes equal. But they don't want equality of choice on the part of the people themselves. Many of the liberals say that they're for the family because they're for creating all kinds of goodies to give to families, but they want to take away the family's fundamental function, which is making decisions for members of the family itself, particularly the younger members who aren't yet grown.